first. Go ahead, Theo.
Can you just talk about what practice was like last night and what you guys felt like you accomplished practicing last night?
I thought it was motivated. I thought it was enthusiastic. I think that most of our team is determined to improve. I think we do have a few guys that get easily distracted, and I think that we need to address that. And and I think that I think that we got several of them that are a little too satisfied and a little too happy, and so we either got to change or get rid of them.
Do you think there's a certain point where the coaches have done all they can? So maybe at a certain point, maybe the players need to start elevating other players, and teammates need to start holding other teammates accountable and whatnot?
I think players definitely need to elevate to other players and hold each other accountable. I think that, if a coach gets in a position where he says, "Well, I've done everything I can," I think that's a cop-out. I think that whether that's true or not, and it's possible that it could be true, I suppose, but whether that's true or not, you have to constantly strive and search for and look for something else you can push on, see, teach, understand. You just got to constantly keep looking for stuff you can do to help improve.
I think you also said on the radio after the game Saturday that you weren't sure if some of the leaders on this team were frauds or.
I think some are, yeah.
Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Well, there's in a certain group, and this goes back to any group you're in. I mean, everybody pick whatever group. Pick your little group of reporters. You go back to your little old office, and whoever's at that office, there's a number of people there, and some are working hard, some are extremely diligent, some, for example, have aspirations to be Ernest Hemingway and write the great American novel, okay? And then others are just punching the clock, want to impress their friends, and want to get in and out as quickly as they can. However, they'll beat their chest about something that is relatively false. I mean, every group has it. Every group's got it. So, we're talking the type that have been there long enough that are somewhat institutionalized to the point where others assume they know what they're talking about. They don't, of course, but the others assume they do. And they're the guys that go, "Oh, well, you don't really have to do that." Well, yeah, I don't care what they're saying. You only have to do this much. This much is enough. Those guys that try to mitigate any level of high effort, every organization's got them, and I'm sure we do. And the other thing is sometimes those guys lurk in the shadows. And hang on, I got a cough. Sometimes those guys, they generally lurk in the shadows, and just, hurt you from within. And so I think that they have to be elevated or eradicated. And then the other thing that's happened on teams I've been a part of is you just got to, recruit new guys and saturate your locker room with guys that are highly motivated and determined to achieve and be successful. And so, I think it's all kind of part of a process, because I didn't think we lost an incredible amount of talent from last year, but we did lose some leadership among the players.
What are your thoughts on Stanford's offense?
Well, they've had a number of different offensive looks and things this year, right? But they're big, they're strong. They're like they always are. They got a good quarterback with a strong arm. Big, strong guys. They'd like to pound the ball, but they do have the ability to throw it.
Coach, this kind of piggybacks off what Theo asked you just a second ago. But after the game on Saturday, you mentioned that the coaching staff hasn't done a good enough job of making this team tough. You mentioned that a few times. At what point does toughness kind of fall on the players?
Well, I think it's awfully difficult to separate coaching staff from players. I think that because you're kind of in it together. so you're kind of in it together. I mean, one group responds to this level of motivation or training to become tough. The other group responds to something different. I think you, as a coach, got to constantly be trying to find that. But any truly dedicated player, if he's a dedicated player and if football's actually meaningful to him, then he's going to, work to try to elevate that. And there's a point to where, players have an obligation to listen. You either got to change them or you got to, you got two choices: change them or cut them. Well, you got three choices: live with it, change them, or cut them. Well, those are your three choices, and all three choices are considered in pretty much every instance. So, and I've done all three throughout my career too.
Also asked after the game, Abe Lucas mentioned that he thinks the team's will to win kind of depends on who they're playing. He mentioned, Oregon, they played hard because they were going up against the top 10 team, and he thinks that maybe fluctuates depending on who you're playing. Do you think the team has kind of fallen into that trap?
Yeah, I do. I do agree with that. I think that, and that's always very reckless. And anybody that tries to make judgments, I mean, that's just laziness. That's laziness and selfishness. That's people saying, "Oh, okay, I have to try hard on this team so I can save my energy for something else." I mean, that's just ridiculous, because then you're not reaching any top level or anything like that. I mean, you, whether it's in practice or a game, you got to constantly be pushing the boundaries and testing, the ultimate extent of your abilities in order to stretch it further. And yeah, I do think there's some making judgments on what it takes to play a certain game, and which is crazy. I mean, and and that'd be an example. If players are doing that, that's totally contradictory to what any coach in this building's preaching. And those guys, if they're that far gone, then we probably ought to look at cutting those guys. So identifying them is difficult. So
you also talked after the game about how the defense played better than the offense. You thought Anthony Gordon starts with an interception early. How do you think the offense were never really able to get back on their feet now that you've kind of watched the film?
Well, I don't think either side played good. I thought both sides played poorly. I thought offensively we did a pretty good job moving the ball, but we weren't consistent. I don't have a position out there on offense I think played well, but I don't have one out there on defense I think played well. The biggest thing, the quickest way to say it is we didn't play together.
Have you ever had an official admit to an error after the next play's run where they obviously can't reverse that call? Has that ever happened to you?
Well, I'm trying to think of the least expensive way to answer that question. I think that's something that you ought to search out and carefully analyze. This game may be a good case study for you to draw whatever conclusion you may or may not draw from it. But I encourage you to do that.
Do you think that that just generally, maybe in college football, not just the Pac-12, do you think officiating needs to be more transparent? And how do you think they can improve that process? I believe you talked the other week on radio show in Oregon about having the officials come in and do a press conference and maybe talk to reporters about different calls they made. Do you have any other ideas about how to do that?
Well, not commenting on any calls or any game. Definitely not commenting on any calls or any game. I've always thought that. I've always thought, as far as to build like if I were to put together, a conference or a league or something like that. I think that the best way is one, you need some level of accountability. But I've always thought that coaches get in this position of commenting on officiating, and rather than have a coach comment on officiating before the press conference starts, just have the referee come in. Any questions that the media has, they ask him, and then they've already been answered, and then the coach doesn't answer it. And then I've also thought a pretty good process would be, I've always thought pay the officials double, and then that way you can pluck from whatever conference, get the very best, the very brightest, the best ones you can, so you can put together the best core you can. Because really, if you think about paying a crew of, a whole bunch of officials double, I mean, that equals 2 blocking sleds, right? I mean, we can all afford that. And then, so then you get the best and the brightest, and carefully evaluate, and then fire the bottom 20% each year, and then hire the best and the brightest from other conferences, since you're playing double. And I think that would be pennies on the dollar, money well spent. And that refers to if I were to have a league and I were to do it and I were to put it together, not anybody in particular, any league in particular, any game in particular.
Did you get any clarity on which member of the coaching staff got the unsportsmanlike penalty on the sideline?
I don't want to comment on that either, because then, of course, I think, but several layers that I think you ought to look at and you may find interesting.
Offensively, coming into this game, Cal was not a great offense. Do you think part of that game was them just getting back on track, or how much do you kind of blame on your own defense, and where do you see the...
I don't know. It doesn't do them any good to worry about what Cal did or what they, all that counts really is what we can do, and we can definitely play better in all aspects of our team, and then so we just need to worry about ourselves. You want to stop Cal, cover your man. If it's man coverage, that's interesting. That's why they call it man coverage, because that's your man. And then, we had guys actually come to the sideline with excuses on why they didn't cover their man. Well, and then, you want to stop Cal, be in your gap. Be in your gap, chase the football. Well, we didn't do those 3 things, and we didn't run to the football on offense, and we didn't play with low pads. So.
Another question about Stanford.
And I think some of these guys are sitting there thinking that we're special, and somebody, has some weird respect for us because of what we did last year. Well, none of that stuff last year counts. And so, and the worst of it is as a coaching staff, we have a weak-minded team if they think that way. And we haven't successfully gotten it out of them yet. And so,
Looking forward to Stanford. They're kind of a different team than they usually look like, especially offensively. They don't have a Bryce Love or a big-time running back. What do they kind of how do they look dangerous offensively?
Well, they have a good running back. They've got a couple good receivers, and they've had a couple quarterbacks that look pretty good to me. I think, but I think they're battling through. Kind of like we are. They're a very similar team to us. They're battling and fighting through.
On offense, Brandon Arconada topped 100 yards again last week. That's 5 games on the season where he's topped 100 yards. What's been the most impressive thing about him to you?
Although I did not think he was terribly impressive last game, I think that the biggest thing is consistency, reliability, which we're searching for that out of everybody. His reliability quotient's probably higher than nearly everybody on the team. He's a reliable person. He's where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. And then, so I think, and that overcomes a lot of ability. We have some guys with more ability, but they're not as reliable as him. And reliable is the most important thing.
Stanford's O-line has been one of their best keys on their offensive end for the past decade or so. How do you feel this year's group stacks up to those groups of past?
They're big and physical. They're big and physical, and then they each year kind of looks the same, really. It's like each year really kind of looks the same. They're a big physical group, good running back, good receivers, and so we'll see.
Let's go to the phone line. Any questions on the phone line? Leach?
Yeah. Hi, Coach. This is Jessamine McIntyre. I was just going to ask what threat you think that Stanford poses defensively?
Well, they play kind of a similar defense to what they always have. They'll play a few coverages and then they'll stem their front some, and they're big physical people. So, I'd say the physicality would be the biggest thing.
And you guys have some undersized wide receivers, and actually Max, too, has proven really strong in the blocking game. Do you foresee any sort of issue with the physicality there?
Yeah. That's kind of Stanford's strength, and they're gonna try to be physical and beat up on us, and we're gonna try to run around them and get loose, which is how we've done over the years.
And finally, you said that there was some enthusiasm shown in practice. Has anyone in particular stood out as a leader that we might not be able to see just watching games?
Yeah, I don't know about that. About anytime any one of these guys thinks they're a leader, they fall on their face, or you look around and, they're a fat, dumb, happy guy, with has a certain amount of self-satisfaction. We're very delicate, I think, mentally, as far as getting really happy with some previous play or some previous game or some previous series. We want to get happy and cruise. Right now, we've got a bunch of cruisers around here, so we have to see what we can do to fix that.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the phone line for Coach?
Yeah, Mike, this is John Wilner at the Mercury News. I'm asking this question with your bank account in mind. Are you at liberty to explain when you were alerted to the mistake that was made on the kickoff return?
I think it's the third quarter, maybe the fourth.
So it was not right at the time?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the phone line? Okay, back in the room.
So, Mike, it was significantly after that play, or was it like one play after?
How's that? You like that one? It was later.
After the game, you alluded to an experiment of nicey positivity. I'm not sure we were aware of that experiment. When did that start? Has that been kind of the approach all season?
Well, I'll tell you the thing that's tough, and I think there's a balance to it. I think that, everybody's striving together. You want to be as positive as you can, but football under the best of circumstances is extremely demanding, and everybody needs to be pushed. I need to be pushed. Coaches need to be pushed. Players need to be pushed. And in the midst of being positive and enjoying, doing good things, there's also got to be that element of push there, and I think that's got to be maintained.
If there was an experiment, it probably grew out of the respect you had for last year's team.
Well, we worked really hard in the off season and things like that. If it's if it's kind of no pressure situations, we work pretty hard. Then all of a sudden it becomes a pressure situation, and we're too quick to want somebody else to take up the slack rather than on an individual level to do our job and to fight through it.
Do you think college students are maybe less likely to want to be pushed today rather than maybe 10, 20 years ago, or maybe you guys could push them more and get better results?
Well, maybe, unless their phone says it's a good idea to be pushed and have people come up and hammer on you and force you to do stuff and tell you no. Then they'd probably embrace it and they'd do it to each other all the time. But the thing is in the meantime, but I think if people are really motivated, I think they'll make whatever sacrifices that are necessary. But I do think that, there's way too much. Everybody has to tell them yes, and, well, you're okay, whatever you think, that's perfect, and that's brilliant, and, we're just going to carve out a different dimension and pretend it's achievement. Well, it's not achievement. You go out there, you block, you tackle, that's achievement, Sitting there telling somebody you achieved somebody or you had some misunderstanding or something, that's not achievement. That's just soft. You're just not very tough. And, so do they hide behind society? Sometimes they might. I don't know, but it doesn't change what we're going to do here.
What stands out about Stanford's cornerback Paulson Adebo? I think number 11. He's kind of an all-conference NFL guy.
Just a good player. That's and this is a gigantic compliment. Reliable. He's a reliable guy.
Then it sounds like you guys are going to be honoring Tyler Helinski on senior night versus Oregon State. Do you know if that was brought up by the family or brought up by you guys to do?
Well, it's our senior night, and of course Tyler's a part of that class, and so we want to celebrate Tyler being a part of that class too. Not thinking specifically about senior night ever. Other than when it happens, but we've always, from the beginning, planned to celebrate and have Tyler a part of everything this class celebrated or did together, just because that was his class.
Anything else for Coach?
Obviously, kind of more in the future, but how much is this team? Anthony mentioned it post-game, talking about we need to be bowl eligible, trying to get 2 more wins. How much does that inspire this team and the coaching staff at this point?
Well, I'm not sure. This will happen one of 2 ways. Either we'll go to a bowl or be preparing for a bowl, or else on, Sunday, December 1st, maybe. Sunday, yeah. We're either going to be preparing for a bowl or Sunday, December 1st, we're going to start off season. One of those 2 things are going to happen.
Anything else for Coach? All right, go ahead, Rob.
All right, Coach, the question this week is a recent study recently found that about 40% of people would spend a week in jail if it meant wiping away their loans, erasing their loans. What are your thoughts on that? Would you spend a week in jail if it meant taking care of your loans as well?
Oh, but hey, let me just say this. Nobody had more student loans than I did, or that had less of a chance of paying them back. So I left undergrad, no student loans. We'd go home to Wyoming every summer. So I went 8 semesters, summer and winter, then went home, worked, and then paid for the semesters. Worked on campus, too. So I didn't have any loans after undergrad. Then law school, I had a ton of student loans, like $38,000. Then I had, then I got out of law school and wanted to look at coaching, and married and had my first daughter. So So then I would have, I did the logical thing, to buy another year and to finance my coach football habit, and got a master's. I took out another student loan, which brought my total up to about $45,000. And at that point in time, they had about as much chance of getting $45,000 as they did $45 million, because that may have been the bill. I mean, $45 million, because make $1 billion, I don't care. I mean, and I figured they could only kill me once, and so then I started pursuing coaching. And in the midst of that, so you got to understand. My first job, I made $3,000 for the year. My second job, I probably made, I don't know, maybe 10. Living in Southern California, I could substitute teach in the off season some, and then, then the next job I'm making like $13,000 in Iowa, but you can't substitute teach because they're only paying you like $30 a day, So then it really wasn't worth it. It wasn't, and so then, because I was cutting away from my regular job, and so then at Wesleyan, though, they did let me teach a couple classes, and I had the weird distinction of teaching 2 classes while taking a class or 2. And the reason I took a class or 2, and the worst of it is the interest rate on my loans were crazy high, because mine were negotiated under the Carter administration. And not to get too political with those of you that may wilt, the Carter administration was not the administration to take your student loans out under, okay? But I did. I didn't have any choice. It was like, okay, let's see, wait till the next okay, here we go. No, so so it's a high interest rate, like crazy high. I can't remember, like 8 or something. And then, I get, so I'm teaching class while taking class, because if you took class, then you could defer the loans until you quit taking class, see? And they did let you do it part-time. I could do it part-time. I didn't have to go full-time, which sometimes you do, depending, what loans you take out. Sometimes you do, So I could defer them if I'm going to school half-time. And I'd take classes I was interested in, and they're pretty good classes. Philosophy of Western thought and civilization, abstract expressionist artists, history of Cuba, history of the Caribbean. So they were good classes. But I was dead broke and took those classes so that I could defer my loans. Because so it was 6 months after you leave school. 6 months after you leave, then they start charging you interest on the loan and start calling for payments. Well, I didn't have any payments. I mean, couldn't pay to support myself. My wife's working, I'm working, not getting paid very much, and then daughter's at daycare. And so then, so then occasionally the bill collector would call. So I tried to defer them as much as I could, take a class. So like during the season, no classes. During the winter, classes. Then I would have to go recruiting or something, and then I'd have to cut a deal with the teacher because I'd miss a significant class and, do a big paper or participate a bunch in class when you're there, that type of thing. So I'd negotiate that out. But I wasn't really doing it for a grade and didn't need the grades or anything. And then, and by then I was a pretty good paper writer, after law school and everything. And then sometimes these bill collectors would call you, and I'd have some knockdown, drag-out conversations with those jokers. So like all those videos that you've seen on the internet are nothing compared to what I was prepared to say to those guys. And then, and then the worst thing was then they would commingle, when you started making payments, they would commingle collection services. So one collection service says, we haven't heard from you in 4 months. Pay your full loans due, pay up or else. Like I'm going to just write a check for $45,000, of course. And then and then the other service would send you something saying, thanks for your payment, and we look forward to getting it next month. So I'm getting two contradictory things. One says, where are you at? And we haven't seen you. And I used to tell these guys, I said, listen, you can either give me another couple months. You can either give me another couple months or accept a lower payment amount, or else I'll go to Mexico. I'll drop off the grid. I'll disappear. You will never see me again. And so, and some were more reasonable than others, but some, like if you want to see some of the biggest pricks on earth, they work in student loan collection, and the fact that they'd work there, it's just relatively disgusting people. They're the type that aspire to be dog catchers or something like that. Okay, and then yep, I'm going to pick up that cat or dog so I can break that kid's heart. So that goes back and forth, and then so they can't even untangle the paper of what they've received and what they haven't. They didn't even know how much they'd received. And so then I said, okay, I'm not paying any of you, because whatever I pay you, you're losing. You can't even keep track of it. Typical action, typical federal government stuff, right? Federal government should manage everything, and they can't even keep track of the student loan payments they're getting from, at least not mine. And so let's see, that's it. Let's have the federal government handle it. They can't sort their paper out. I refuse to pay. And then somehow it starts going up the chain, like I didn't have much of an ability to pay anyway. Then it starts going up the chain, and then they get the thing, and then I start taking classes again, and then somehow I in the sea of bureaucrats, I ended up talking to somebody that had some sense, some reason, okay? And so he understands, okay, I'm going to write this up. Okay, yeah, you were getting stuff where they demanded payment, said you were 6 months behind, and then the other saying, thank you for the payment you sent. He goes, okay, I got you. And he did get the thing back on track. Okay, so then he gets it back on track. And as I get to the University of Kentucky, I'm able to make monthly payments on my student loan. And you can do the math. This was a lot of years. It wasn't until my second year as head coach at Texas Tech, that I got my student loans paid for. So needless to say, would I spend a week? Would I spend a week in jail to get rid of my student loans? I would have spent 3 months in jail to get rid of my student loans, and I would have done it happily. And eventually, before it was all said and done, I'd be leading prison calisthenics and stuff like that. Requesting certain menu items, stuff like that, going to the best shank builder and get a good shank, for if I needed anything like that. You damn right I would have gone. I would have gone for 3 months. That thing has been a corrupt mess for a long, long, long time. A week, I would have been like that leprechaun on the damn Lucky Charms if they said, okay, 1 week, all your student loans are erased. I would have gone in the hole for 1 week.
Any other questions for Coach? All right, thanks, Coach.
All right, that's it.